Act. Take the appropriate actions following the rehearsal, such as declaring it a success, or alternatively, recommending that it is not fit to be deployed and should be referred back to design or transition for rework. If the rehearsal shows that the actual environment is very different from what was expected, the service may have to be referred back to the strategy stage for a complete rethink. The rehearsal should be formally closed, and any improvements identified logged on the CSI register. We have already discussed the purpose and value of piloting the service. It is a low-risk, but real-life test of the service, verifying that the service is able to deliver the required utility and warranty when used in a live environment. Any improvements identified as a result of the pilot should be included in the costs of the deployment. Clear objectives for the pilot should be established in advance, and how it will be signed off as successful and by whom. It is the responsibility of the release and deployment management team to ensure that the pilot is a realistic example of how the service will be used. They need to ensure that staff know how to use the service, and that appropriate documentation is available to users and support teams. At the end of the pilot, they should understand the level of support that will be required following deployment. As issues are highlighted, they should be resolved to prevent them from impacting the service following deployment. Where this is impossible, issues should be added as improvements to the CSI register. Clear success or failure criteria need to be set for the pilot, and metrics gathered to compare with the expected performance. The service must be evaluated to confirm whether it will be able to deliver the customer requirements. A formal change evaluation may be held to assess the risks of continuing with the deployment. A successful pilot will provide evidence that the service is ready to be deployed across the live environment and has been accepted as such by all stakeholders. Now that the release has been successfully built and tested, we are ready to commence deployment. The first step is to plan and prepare for the deployment. We discussed preparing people for organizational change in the change management module. An opportunity to carry this out occurs at this stage. The earlier lesson where we discussed release and deployment planning defined the overall approach to deployment. During the actual deployment, we develop a detailed implementation plan and assign resources based on the work done in deployment planning. Before the planning and preparation of a deployment takes place, the entry criteria for this stage must be met. These include stakeholders having confidence in the release, based on the testing and pilots which have taken place. The cost and resource implications of the deployment must be known and accepted by stakeholders within the business and the IT service provider organization. On the screen, you can see an example of a set of deployment activities. Study it carefully. Note how each stage is authorized by change management and the inclusion of decommissioning service assets, early life support, and formal closure stages. The deployment may be introducing a new service or transferring it in or out of an organization. One of the key activities in deployment is the readiness assessment, which should be conducted early in the planning stages. It will then be revisited later to ensure that the situation has not changed. The readiness assessment ensures that the expected impact of the deployment is understood, resources are available and trained, and that there have been no last-minute changes to requirements. The level of readiness will impact the deployment plan. The areas that should be covered in the assessment are included in your study guide.